Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I want to dive deep into a story that encapsulates the essence of family legacy, loss, and the consequences of entitlement. It begins in a quaint, somewhat old-fashioned town where a sprawling estate known as Oakwood Manor stands as a testament to a family's history. Owned by Eleanor Thorne, the matriarch of the Thorne family, this estate represents generations of memories, struggles, and ultimately discord. Eleanor had inherited this magnificent property, nestled on the semi-rural outskirts of the town, from her ancestors. The town itself was famous for its charming antique shops and the surrounding preserved forest, a serene backdrop that contrasted sharply with the turbulent family dynamics taking place within the manor's walls. While Eleanor held the master deed for the entire family trust, in a twist of irony and perhaps neglect, she had verbalized a division of the estate amongst her children, her estranged daughter Clara and her troubled son Caleb, each receiving a section. Clara occupied a modest slice of land, preferring her quiet life away from the family drama, while Caleb, struggling with addiction and reckless decisions, built a house on his section that mirrored his extravagant tastes. As time went on, it became abundantly clear that Caleb had little regard for the responsibilities tied to his property. Despite Eleanor's insistence on his autonomy and wealth, Caleb failed miserably in maintaining his home. His lifestyle was marked by wild and destructive parties that turned the peaceful community into a scene of chaos. Noise complaints became the norm, with the local police officers frequently showing up to deal with the disturbances, often accompanied by minor vandalism fueled by Caleb's ill-considered choices. Each party brought about consequences that Caleb was unwilling or incapable of managing. Caleb's financial neglect extended beyond mere noise complaints. He accumulated significant unpaid property taxes, ignored crucial building code violations, and incurred fines for property damage that were rapidly piling up. Despite Eleanor's oversight of the estate, she maintained a troubling ignorance about the extent of Caleb's neglect. It was as if she turned a blind eye to her son's unraveling life, perhaps out of fear, denial, or a misguided sense of loyalty. The tipping point came one fateful evening. During one of Caleb's infamous parties, a structural fire erupted due to negligence, marking the beginning of an unavoidable downfall. The local authorities, fed up with the ongoing disturbances and property damage, took action. They seized Caleb's property due to the overwhelming backlog of unpaid taxes and violations, swiftly scheduling an expedited auction. A once grand home filled with memories was now left in catastrophic disarray, a haunting reminder of what had deteriorated over the years. Stripped wiring, burst pipes, and extensive mold made the house a biohazard, appealing only to cash buyers looking for a project or ambitious developers salivating at the potential profit. As Caleb sat in jail, grappling with the aftermath of his reckless choices, Eleanor was forced to confront the reality of losing not just her son's home, but also a key piece of their family legacy. Caleb's failures were now intertwined with her own, forcing her to reckon with the consequences of her inaction and the choices she had made for her family. In a town where every face tells a story and every street corner holds a memory, the tale of Oakwood Manor was just beginning to unravel. The legacy that had once been a proud family estate was turning into a tortured manifestation of regret and despair, setting the stage for an even deeper exploration of familial ties, the weight of inheritance, and the burdens that can morph into shackles. Stay tuned as we delve further into the lives intertwined by Oakwood Manor and the choices that will forever alter their destinies. In the ongoing saga of Oakwood Manor, we shift focus from the disintegration of the Thorne family to the emergence of a new protagonist, Liam, an architect with a passion for historic preservation. While the manor's past is steeped in the chaos of familial disputes, the stage is set for a renaissance, driven by Liam's vision and tenacity. Liam is not just any architect. He is a meticulous freelance designer in his mid-30s, with a distinguished focus on breathing new life into crumbling historic homes. For him, every restoration project represents a legacy, not just a professional endeavor. When he received a community newsletter highlighting the recent auction of Oakwood Manor, a spark ignited within him. The prospect of working on a project that embodied both history and potential was intoxicating. Although the house had fallen into disrepair and neglect, its once grand Victorian architecture whispered stories of the past, promises of the beauty that could be restored, if only someone had the will and the dedication to do so. Liam's journey brought him to a pivotal moment. As he walked the grounds of Oakwood Manor, stepping cautiously inside the dilapidated structure, an overwhelming sense of responsibility washed over him. This home, despite its decay, exuded charm. The intricacies of its design, the arching windows, the ornate crown molding, and the towering ceilings, spoke to Liam's deepest instincts as a preservationist. He envisioned not just restoring the house, but reviving a community's spirit and history intertwined with it. However, Liam understood all too well that transformative projects come with a hefty price tag, both financially and emotionally. He had spent years perfecting his craft, yet he knew he was entering uncharted territory. The lengths to which he would need to go to secure funding for a restoration project of this magnitude challenged him in ways he had never anticipated. The challenge came in the form of Silas, a seasoned salvage specialist who had made a name for himself in the world of historical renovations. Silas had recently acquired the distressed property through the auction, lured by its promise of profitability in both financial terms and emotional reward. Arriving at the scene, Liam introduced himself, eager to discuss a potential deal. He explained his vision for the manor, one that would respect its rich history while creating a modern living space that could flourish anew. Silas, initially skeptical about selling so soon after acquiring the house, listened intently as Liam outlined his plans. Over several days, their conversations deepened as they analyzed the house's structure, its needs, and the community that surrounded it. Silas, influenced by Liam's unwavering passion and vision for preservation, began to soften. The seasoned contractor recognized something he had not seen from others interested in the property, a genuine commitment to honor the home and its legacy. Inspired by their discussions, Silas found himself contemplating the reality of selling the house, despite the potential that lay ahead for him as the owner. However, life has a way of intervening when we least expect it. Just as discussions about a potential sale began, Silas faced dire personal circumstances that would reorganize his priorities entirely. His only grandchild developed a serious health condition, requiring expensive treatment. Faced with a financial crisis, Silas reached out to Liam with a heavy heart and an urgent proposition. He needed to sell the property quickly to raise the necessary funds. Their conversations turned into negotiations, with the urgency of Silas's situation hanging heavily in the air. Unexpectedly, Silas proposed a significantly discounted rate contingent upon a fast closing, given the circumstances. Here they found a surprising camaraderie. Silas adjusted the sale price to provide Liam with some of the capital needed for immediate repairs, upon the understanding that this would make a difference to both their futures. Silas recognized his own legacy in this act, ensuring the property would not only live on but thrive under Liam's stewardship. With the deal struck and the future of Oakwood Manor hanging in the balance, Liam launched into a frantic sequence of preparations. He learned the intricacies of securing a specialized renovation loan, understanding the need to meet stringent completion timelines to secure funding for much-needed repairs. The process was grueling, filled with unforeseen challenges and setbacks, yet Liam remained undeterred. Day after day, he rallied a small team of loyal colleagues, skilled tradespeople who shared his aspirations and dedication to preserving history. Together, they worked tirelessly, often sacrificing their nights and weekends. Liam would sleep not in his own bed but on site, often fueled by coffee and resolve, pushing through the physical labor required to bring the house back from the brink of destruction. Months rolled by, filled with both grueling work and moments of joy as they unearthed beautiful original features hidden beneath layers of neglect. Liam approached each task meticulously, from restoring intricate moldings to upgrading the electrical system to ensure the house's safety and sustainability. Slowly yet surely, Oakwood Manor began to reclaim its dignity. While the concept of a dream home remained tantalizingly close yet still unfinished, the journey itself became a tapestry woven with determination, hope, and a new vision for the future. As the project took form and Liam moved into the manor, albeit with unfinished details and a bare landscape, he felt a sense of fulfillment and purpose. However, the emotional echoes of the Thorne family still lingered, and the path ahead would soon reveal that the legacy of Oakwood Manor was as much about confronting the past as it was about creating a new beginning. Stay tuned as the story unfolds further, and we witness the conflict between Liam's aspirations and the unresolved legacy of the Thorne family that would lead to unforeseen challenges ahead. As Oakwood Manor underwent its meticulous restoration, under Liam's watchful eye, an unforeseen adversary emerged from the shadows of familial discord. Eleanor Thorne, the persistent matriarch of the Thorne family, entered the scene with a fervor fueled by desperation and denial. The decay that had overtaken the manor was not merely a problem of structural neglect. It was a poignant reminder of Eleanor's own crumbling legacy, one she believed was being ripped away from her grasp. Eleanor was deeply entrenched in preserving her family's history. To her, Oakwood Manor was more than brick and mortar. It embodied generations of memories, hopes, and dreams, certainly too significant for an outsider like Liam to heartlessly restore. Stepping onto Liam's property unannounced, one sunny afternoon, Eleanor clutched a faded photograph of the manor, a sepia-toned relic from a time she longed to cling to. She confronted Liam with a tempest of emotions, accusing him of stealing ancestral land and defiling a family legacy with every hammer stroke that echoed through the hollow rooms. "It is not yours to ruin," she declared, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. "My son Caleb would have looked after it if it had not been taken from him in a wave of injustice." Liam, taken aback by her confrontational approach, felt his initial impulse to engage gently take a back seat to the need for pragmatism. He had done his research. He knew the facts. He assured Eleanor that all dealings had been legitimate and verified, that Oakwood Manor was now his by right of purchase. This, however, seemed to deepen her protests rather than quell them. Eleanor's sense of entitlement, previously intact, began to unravel, revealing her vulnerabilities as a mother entangled in familial strife. In the following weeks, Eleanor intensified her campaign of harassment. She would appear unannounced, often standing at the threshold of the property, her brow furrowed in accusation as she adroitly played the victim. Her tearful tales of Caleb's misfortunes served as a poignant backdrop to an increasingly aggressive stance. She framed herself as the protector of the manor's spirit, determined to save it from the hands of someone she considered an interloper. "Your presence is a plight," she would insist, clenching her fists against her sides. "You are erasing the blood and sweat that made this home great." Liam, undeterred by her belligerence, sought to de-escalate tensions. In a gesture of goodwill, he offered to engage in dialogue, suggesting that perhaps they could find a way to honor the history of Oakwood Manor together. He proposed the idea of purchasing her sentimental claims to the land for a nominal fee, or even transferring ownership back to her at a fair price, if it would restore familial ties. However, Eleanor scoffed at his overture, branding him a city slicker and dismissing his painstaking restoration efforts as a mere desecration. As Liam continued to devote his day-to-day life to the labor of love that was Oakwood Manor, Eleanor took to the community, leveraging her long-standing influence among the residents. She painted Liam as a so-called carpetbagger, manipulating the narrative to suggest he was capitalizing on the misfortunes that had plagued the Thorne family rather than honoring its legacy. The whispers among neighbors became more pronounced, and Liam, despite his efforts to integrate, found himself an outsider in a small-town world where traditions and histories tangled intricately. Among those watching the unfolding drama was Old Man Hemlock, a revered figure within the community known for his unwavering principles. An astute observer of local dynamics, he initially took Eleanor's side, swayed by her reputation and her heart-wrenching tales. But over time, he began to notice the inconsistencies in Eleanor's narrative. Intrigued by her resentful rhetoric and Liam's unwavering documentation of ownership, Old Man Hemlock sought the truth that lay buried beneath the surface of familial animosity. Carefully examining public records, including documentation and transaction agreements, he pieced together the legitimacy of Liam's claim. Hemlock found himself in the unique position of straddling the line between two worlds: the affinity for Eleanor's long-standing benevolence to the community and the rising respect for Liam's commitment to restoring the historic manor. As whispers circulated, a palpable tension enveloped the small town, simmering beneath Eleanor's roaring tempest. Moreover, the fabric of the community was challenged by the lingering specter of Eleanor's increasing hostility. Many residents remained wary of Liam, fearful of Eleanor's social retribution. They watched as a battle for Oakwood Manor unfolded, one that would not only involve structures and ownership, but also touch upon the deeper themes of legacy, memory, and the ties that bind individuals to their ancestral roots. Meanwhile, Liam maintained a focus on his vision and passion. He knew that the path to acceptance among the locals would be a long one, especially while Eleanor wielded her influence like a weapon against him. Despite it all, he grounded himself in the hope of transforming the manor into a space that would honor both its past and its potential future, a dream that, unbeknownst to him, was increasingly intertwined with not just his ambition but the very essence of Eleanor's fragmented ideals. Thus, the stage was set for the inevitable confrontation between Eleanor's misguided obsession and Liam's unyielding resolve. As summer turned into fall, the chill between the two would only grow, igniting tensions within the community and setting in motion an unraveling that neither could foresee. Stay tuned, for the fate of Oakwood Manor and its legacy continues to hang in a delicate balance. As Oakwood Manor flourished under Liam's careful restoration, the shadow of Eleanor Thorne loomed ever larger, casting a darkness over her once prestigious community hub, the Gilded Lily. The antique consignment shop was not merely a place for commerce. It had long served as the social heart of the community. Known for its tasteful decor and warm atmosphere, Eleanor prided herself on fostering connections and creativity within the small town. However, the facade of prosperity that she had so painstakingly built began to crack, revealing turbulent undercurrents as Caleb, her troubled son, returned to the family property. Caleb's presence was a double-edged sword. Fresh from a jail stint, he appeared to have changed, yet the whispers of his past, the substance abuse, reckless behavior, and incompetence, echoed in the minds of the townsfolk. Eleanor, desperate to bolster her crumbling empire, enlisted him to manage the Gilded Lily, thinking familiarity with the family business would ground him. Yet as days turned into weeks, it became painfully clear that Caleb's demons were far from exorcised. His gambling addiction resurfaced with vengeance, and beneath Eleanor's watchful gaze, a new, darker chapter began to unfurl. What started as minor discrepancies in the shop's accounting soon spiraled into outright deception. Caleb, driven by financial desperation, devised a scheme to siphon cash from the modest artisan vendors he had promised to support. He shortchanged them by inventing elaborate excuses, claiming either sales were slow or that items had not sold as well as anticipated. This deceit was compounded further as he began selling valuable wares out the back door, cash in hand, with the betrayal masked by the warm glow of cheerful smiles and friendly banter in the shop. Liam, seeking to forge community ties and support the local artisans, sometimes attended craft fairs held at the Gilded Lily. It was there that he first sensed the undercurrents of discontent. Whispered complaints floated in the air like ghosts, seemingly alluding to unfair dealings, broken promises, and questions surrounding Caleb's integrity. Liam's instinct urged him to investigate further, but he was painfully aware of Eleanor's icy grip on her fellow townsfolk. He endeavored to alert her to these financial discrepancies, hoping to open a dialogue about the shop's troubling trajectory. However, his concerns were quickly dismissed and labeled as meddlesome interference from an outsider. Eleanor, unable to see her son's glaringly evident failings, defended Caleb with a vehement intensity. "He is my son," she would insist, her voice rising in indignation. "You do not understand the struggles we have faced. He is misunderstood." The reports of Caleb's mismanagement slipped beneath the surface, hushed by Eleanor's unwavering loyalty and veil of denial. With the community caught in a trap of loyalty to Eleanor and her long-standing influence, dissent simmered just beneath the surface. Among the skeptical observers was Old Man Hemlock, a veteran of the community, wise in the ways of people and their dynamics. Known for his keen intuition and sharp moral compass, Hemlock occupied the diner every morning, his cup of coffee in hand, listening to the tales recounted around the worn wooden tables. At first, Hemlock sided with Eleanor, charmed by her kindly disposition and commitment to the community. Yet as old friends began to confide in him about their unsettled feelings towards Caleb's activities and potential wrongdoings, Hemlock's steadfast viewpoint began to shift. The inconsistencies began to irk him. Keen to uncover the truth, he started piecing together the patterns behind Caleb's skimming and Eleanor's complicity, or at the very least her willful ignorance. With his investigation spanning weeks, Hemlock quietly gathered evidence, comparing Caleb's sales reports with actual inventory movements, engaging with the artisans who had become increasingly disillusioned and frustrated. As Hemlock pieced together a disturbing picture of theft, fueled by desperation, he resolved to address the issue directly. The town's annual meeting was approaching, a gathering that promised to give voice to community grievances and concerns. It was the perfect platform, yet it was not without its risks. Hemlock knew that challenging Eleanor meant exposing her to the very people she had held in thrall for so many years. On the day of the meeting, the atmosphere was thick with tension. As the townspeople trickled in, murmurs of anticipation floated through the air. Hemlock could feel the uncertainty, a mixture of fear and hope, as community members, loyal to Eleanor, due to years of trusted relationships, began to realize that her ship was starting to sink. The meeting commenced, and chit soon gave way to serious discussions. Eleanor, eager to maintain her facade, stood at the forefront, radiating confidence. She spoke passionately about the Gilded Lily and her vision for the community. But as she continued her speech, Hemlock seized the moment, presenting his meticulously gathered evidence, a stark and damning report that exposed Caleb's actions in vivid detail. He laid everything bare, dissecting the lies, the theft, and ultimately portraying Eleanor's ignorance as complicity. Murmurs of shock cascaded through the assembly as the gravity of the situation dawned on the townsfolk. In that moment, the spectrum of loyalty among the locals began to shift. There were whispers of disillusionment, and those once reluctant to believe testimony against Eleanor slowly acknowledged the truth that had been laid bare. The facade of the Gilded Lily started to shatter, fragments of Eleanor's carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around her. The trust that had forged her once vibrant business had been ruthlessly stripped away, exposing her standing in the community as nothing more than a hollow shell. As the meeting dissipated into somber chatter, the Gilded Lily began losing its artisan vendors in droves. Vendors, once devoted to Eleanor's vision of community, sought refuge elsewhere, seeking to be free of any association with the Thorn name. Eleanor's carefully curated legacy, the heart and soul of the town, was devastated, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own making. Simultaneously, Liam observed the transformation in community dynamics, realizing that his patience and integrity were starting to yield results. He began to earn the respect that had been so initially elusive, though it was bittersweet against the backdrop of Eleanor's looming downfall. The landscape around him was shifting. He had once been an outsider, but through perseverance and truth, he was slowly being woven into the community's fabric, while Eleanor found herself on the outside looking in, her pedestal crumbling beneath her feet. The collapse of the Gilded Lily served as a symbol of Eleanor's public downfall, a testament to the consequences of entitlement, denial, and the malignant nature of buried truths. The once beloved matriarch was reduced to a caricature of her former self, and as autumn leaves fell against the backdrop of the setting sun, the town stood at the brink of change, a metamorphosis that neither Eleanor nor Liam could have foreseen. Stay tuned as we delve into the final chapters of this story, where boundaries will be drawn, legacies challenged, and the true meaning of home and heritage will emerge in a landscape transformed by conflict and resolution. As the quiet days rolled into warm evenings at Oakwood Manor, triumph hung in the air for Liam. He had successfully navigated the complexities of restoring the once decaying mansion, slowly integrating himself into the community, and earning the respect he desired. But in the shadow of this accomplishment loomed a persistent specter. Eleanor Thorne. Even with her influence diminished, her obsession with the property line continued to gnaw at her sanity, creating an air of tension that felt palpable within the formerly peaceful town. Eleanor's life had been transformed into a relentless quest fueled by spite. The very house that once served as her fortress of power now became a symbolic battleground. She pored over the original deed, convinced that the boundaries she perceived had been violated. Every day she would venture outside, armed with old photographs and a stubborn belief that the legacy of her family extended far beyond what legal documentation could state. Each morning she would peer through the thick foliage separating her property from Liam's, eyes narrowed, waiting for a glimpse of any perceived encroachment. It was during this time that Liam began to realize the extent of Eleanor's fixation. Tasked with transforming his garden, a personal ode to the manor's historic charm, he called on a professional landscaper. Together, they envisioned an exquisite garden, with fragrant blooms and leafy canopies creating a sanctuary. But as they surveyed the land to find the perfect spots for ornamental trees and colorful flower beds, the landscapers stumbled upon something extraordinary and unexpected. "Mr. Thorne," he began cautiously, "there seems to be a discrepancy here. The gazebo on your property, it appears to extend quite a bit onto Eleanor's land, almost a third of an acre." Frustrated but intrigued, Liam directly retrieved the house survey he had kept since the purchase. As he examined it, his heart sank. The lines on the paper told a different story. The lush blooms he envisioned now appeared to rest upon disputed territory. Eleanor's furious reactions to Liam's renovations rang in his ears. Vivid memories of her confrontational outbursts, her vehement declarations of ancestral rights and accusations of theft, echoed through his mind. She had always been a self-proclaimed guardian of the Thorne legacy, and here lay an opportunity for her to reignite her grievances. The conflict clogged the air with tension. Liam knew he needed a professional assessment to clarify the situation. Placing his trust in reliable town surveyors, he sought to resolve the burgeoning dispute. Much to his dismay, however, Eleanor's influence cast a shadow over this process. The town's licensed surveyor, who had served the community for decades, happened to be an old family friend of Eleanor's. When Liam approached him to undertake a second survey, there were whispered implications and vague insinuations. "You know how it is. Local complexities can complicate matters. Might be best to leave it be." Frustration mounted as competing interests clashed, revealing a complex web of personal politics. Why would he not just carry out a simple task? The answer seemed apparent: fear of roping himself into Eleanor's ongoing battle and dealing with her fierce retaliation. The surveyors that Liam found from neighboring areas were soon ambushed by mysteriously removed markers, leaving them uncertain and unable to pinpoint exact borders. Amid the uncertainty, Eleanor's obsession intensified. Looming behind her closed curtains, she plotted and theorized, hurling insults about false claims and unfounded trespasses, as if they were natural extensions of her character. Every moment turned into a micro-disaster in their ongoing war. Within weeks, whispers circulated through the town. "Did you hear about her old rose garden?" An older woman remarked at the diner. "They say it's spilling over onto Thorne's property. How dare he think he can just amass more for himself?" You could almost feel the waves of energy vibrating through the walls of the diner, an insatiable glee blossoming among those choosing sides in the conflict. Finally, Liam, fueled by a mixture of competing emotions, anger, frustration, the desire for peace, committed to an independent surveyor from a distant city. He would not bend to the whims of local loyalties. The mystery of the encroachment demanded resolution. Upon their arrival, the fresh eyes of the surveyor studied the property lines with precision. "This is going to take a while," he said, raising his eyebrows as he marked points along the land. He quickly proved methodical, seeking accuracy over conjecture, a breath of fresh air compared to the previous experiences. Weeks passed, and the fateful day of revelation was inevitable. Liam found himself beyond anxious, heart racing each time he heard a vehicle approach his newfound sanctuary. He recalled the invasive gazes that Eleanor sent over the property line and prepared himself for the refusal of her latest desperate attempt at reclaiming history. When the surveyor finally returned, the damning truth presented itself like a clarion bell. "Based on the new measurements and the historical deeds, we have established a definitive boundary," he said crisply. When directed to present to the town council, the atmosphere crackled with tension. As he laid out his findings, a hush fell over the gathered townsfolk. "Eleanor," Liam said, calmly but firmly, "the ancient oak tree and your gardens, they are distinctly on your side of the property line." Exchanged looks of disbelief and murmurs rippled through the assembly. Eleanor's expression morphed into a tempest of fury and disbelief. Inches from complete financial devastation, the emotional fallout was evident. Rather than commanding her previous ranch of loyalty, Eleanor found herself isolated, her underhanded tactics uncovered and disregarded. As the realization dawned on those present, the unwelcome revelations began to unravel Eleanor's power over both her property and social standing. The once mighty matriarch now found herself on the periphery of a community that had turned its back on her, shocked and shaken by the tides of change. As whispers of her obsessive antics lingered, the town was free to grow and evolve in Liam's favor. Months passed, and the garden that Liam envisioned flourished into a vivid showcase of color and life, the air rich with sweet fragrances amidst the crops of heritage and history. Meanwhile, Eleanor stared from her windows, plotting her return to power, grappling with the loss of control over her legacy that she had feared would slip away. In the end, the standoff not only laid bare the complexities of power and wealth, but served as a strong reminder that sometimes legacies need to evolve rather than cling to hollow memories. After all, the passage of time and relentless growth is inevitable. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Thank you everyone for journeying through this emotional tale of legacy and conflict. As we've seen, the power dynamics between individuals can shift dramatically, particularly when entitlements and obsession cloud judgment. If you enjoyed this narrative, please consider liking and subscribing. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts on how legacy affects our choices, and join us next time as we explore yet another story of human conflict, resilience, and growth. Until the next chapter, take care.